Games industry cannot stop taking L's right now. Just over a week ago, the Tarkov community was in open revolt over the developers redefining of the term DLC in order to not deliver players content that they had already been sold. A fight that the players still haven't won yet, by the way. That is still very much an unresolved issue as we speak. And then within the last week, as I'm sure you've heard, given the quite frankly unprecedented level of coverage, which we have the swift and uniform pushback from the player base to thank, was Sony attempting to force a PlayStation Network account on Helldiver players, even in countries where Sony themselves would not let those accounts be created. And now, just in the last few days, we have Elite Dangerous players review bombing their Steam page over the introduction of a pay-to-win ship and a completely unannounced doubling or trebling of the premium currency shop prices, making any held premium currency instantly lose half its value. That's right, in the space of about a week and a half, we've now had 3 high-profile games get their reviews absolutely destroyed on Steam due to the egregious anti-consumer moves by the developer or publisher of that game. Elite Dangerous is an MMO-ish space simulation game where players start with only a small starship and a few credits, with the primary gameplay progression involving upgrading your ship through the collection of resources and in-game credits, with the key point here being all ships and upgrades are entirely acquired via in-game mechanics, with only cosmetics being purchasable in the item shop, a very common and largely accepted monetization strategy in today's gaming ecosystem. So when ED's developers, Frontier, announced for the very first time since the game's release in 2015 that a ship was going to be premium currency purchasable, the player base was understandably outraged. To add insult to injury, any players who would get the satisfaction of unlocking the Python Mark II through in-game means, by actually playing the game they've already purchased and supported with DLC and cosmetic microtransactions, will be denied that opportunity until August 2024. So let's quickly tick off all the shady and manipulative tactics that Frontier is using here to exploit their player base, because it's both murky and deep. Firstly, FOMO, fear of missing out. Frontier is exploiting players' natural FOMO reaction by making the ship premium for the first 3 months. So even if players had the in-game resources, even if players had the in-game knowledge or had the in-game skills to unlock the Starship, there is a very real social pressure that convinces some players to pay with real-world money instead of waiting the 3 months. If you can't relate to FOMO, I'm genuinely happy you're not vulnerable to that psychological hack. But do not worry, Frontier knows that one scummy strategy is not enough, because they are also using uneven premiumcy currency bundles to force players to buy more than the actual cost of the ship. I'm sure this strategy has a proper industry name, but I do not know it, so someone please let me know in the comments so I can use it in the future. Python Mark II costs 33,000 ARCs, roughly $25 USD. But because Frontier sells ARCs only in predefined amounts, they can very easily manipulate the premium prices to force players to continuously buy the next bundle up the chain. So instead of only paying $25, you are now paying $37.99, an extra 50% on top of the ship's quote-unquote worth. Now, if you were immune to FOMO and you were never going to buy the premium currency bundles in the first place, you might think you've got off scot-free, that these monetization strategies will not affect you in-game in any meaningful way whatsoever. Well, do I have bad news for you? Stay with me for a minute here. The entirety of ED's gameplay progression revolves around upgrading starships. So while this ship is 100% pay to win from a new player perspective, one new player buys the Python Mark II, the other one sticks to the default, the premium ship purchase straight up wins in every single comparison between the two. But that is not the worst part. The most insidious part of this microtransaction is that it's pay to skip. You pay real world money to skip some of the core gameplay loop, which ED players generously described as super grindy. Why is pay to skip an issue? Because it financially incentivizes the developers to make the game unbearably grindy in order to encourage further microtransaction sales. So even if you don't participate in the premium currency shop, Frontier has now tied their financial success to frustrating your fellow players enough with grindy gameplay that they spend real-world money to skip the grind, which encourages the developers to introduce more grind, making your gameplay experience worse because they know they can then sell the solution to that worse gameplay experience in the premium shop, generating them even more money. By following this monetization model, Frontier will never introduce a meaningful in-game mechanic to reduce the grind, because that would directly impact their bottom line. Did you want some high-risk, high-reward farming mechanics introduced? Did you want a higher skill expression challenge that earns comparable amounts of rewards? No new version of these will ever be introduced into the game, because it will directly reduce the developer's profits. Now, Frontier has released a press statement saying they are investigating an engineering rebalance and will post more detailed rundown in the coming months, but given that doing so in any meaningful way directly contradicts their new monetization strategy, I'll believe it when I see it, and not a moment before. And this is the true core disease that microtransactions and premium currencies introduce into our games. They encourage those profiting from these systems to make a worse product so they can sell the solution to that problem they created. I went on a whole rant last week about how I've seen this very thing happen to Bethesda's Elder Scrolls Online, and don't worry, I'm not going to repeat myself here. I just need to stress to anyone who is skeptical or thinks I'm exaggerating this issue, I have seen firsthand it destroy my most beloved video game, and I don't want to see it happen to yours. Whether Frontier is setting up this system deliberately or accidentally does not matter. The results are the same. They make more money by giving you a worse product. Did that sound like a conclusion to you? Well, I'm very sorry, because I am not yet done tearing apart Frontier's terrible decision making over the past few days. On top of introducing a pay-to-win Starship, they've also doubled or tripled all the prices in the premium currency store with no warning or grace period given to the player base. This means any purchases of ARCs made a month ago, a few weeks, or even just a few days ago have now been devalued by 2 to 3 times. So if prior to this update you purchased 51,000 ARCs for $37.99, no you didn't. You still paid the $37.99, but now you only have the equivalent of 25,000 ARCs or less in your account. Overnight, Frontier just pissed away 50% of the value of all premium currency purchases that have ever been made that players were holding unspent in their account. If this was any form of legitimate currency, this would be a wildly illegal move to make. Even if something similar was pulled in the crypto space, Diamond Hand hodler bros would still dump their holdings instantly to mitigate further loss. And yet, because this is a premium gaming currency, one step removed from real-world fiat currency, there is zero regulations mitigating the greedy, moralless hacks who fully control and manipulate this system in their favor. The correct way to do premium price adjustments is not a secret, and it's very straightforward. Developers should be changing the dollar to premium currency conversion rate, not the premium currency to item rate. That way, the value of already purchased ARCs that are unspent are not affected in any way. Given how common a practice this is, and how this problem has been solved ever since premium currency started getting introduced into video games over a decade ago, I can honestly only assume negative intent from Frontier. They did this deliberately to maximize their own profits at the expense of the player base. What are your thoughts on this, Storm? He has no brain cells in that head of his. Whilst Tarkov players are still struggling against their developers, Helldiver players have managed to successfully reverse their publisher's anti-consumer decision. Why was Helldiver's community successful when Tarkov's was not? Solidarity. Helldiver's community spoke out almost universally against Sony's decision. They even had the developers Arrowhead on their side, tacitly endorsing review bombing of the game to pressure Sony to change their decision. They also had one advantage that both Tarkov and Elite Dangerous don't have: a brand new player base that hasn't been conditioned and Stockholm syndromed into taking whatever slop the developers shit out. Looking back over ED's Steam review chart does not paint a pretty picture. Whilst it's not death by 1,000 cuts, yet, the community has clearly still taken 1,000 cuts, and that has collectively increased their tolerance for whatever bullshit the developers do, meaning their reaction to the pay-to-win ship and premium shop price increases has been fragmented at best, nowhere near the universal outcry that is required to force a change of course. This apathy is exactly what Frontier has deliberately sown over the last 9 years of the game's lifespan, and it's an opinion they calculatedly maintain in order to minimize pushback. In researching this video, I tried looking up Elite Dangerous content creators on YouTube to see who was talking about these issues that I've addressed today. And although I found plenty of videos clickbait in the new pay-to-win ship, no one was seriously discussing the implications. They stated the introduction of the ship as a fact, and then danced around analysing the consequences or providing an opinion. And that is a problem. Of the half dozen videos I watched, most of the creators were either in the Elite Dangerous Partner Program or angling to be friendly towards it, and that was having a clear editorial impact on the way they presented information. I'm not going to be providing links to these videos, as one, they were pretty much useless in my research in the first place, just being mouthpieces of Frontier and reading patch notes verbatim, and two, because I know they have a precarious position in the partner program where the balance of power is stacked almost insurmountably against them. I don't begrudge them trying to make a living whilst being shackled to a single game and a single developer. However, less than nothing statements like these cash shots items could be a lot worse, or it's whether or not you class these ships as an in-game advantage or just a convenience, are being deliberately obtuse. To the first point, monetization can always be worse. Literally anything can always be worse. This isn't a clever argument, and this isn't a reason to excuse the manipulative status quo of the monetization model. To the second creator, we covered this in part 1 of the video, so I'm not going to completely rehash it, just quickly. Paying for a convenience will encourage the developers to introduce more inconvenience so they can sell the solution to that inconvenience, creating an infinite feedback loop that negatively affects players who aren't even engaging in the pay-to-win mechanics. If the content creators for Elite Dangerous community are not speaking up, you are going to have a hard time getting a wider audience on your side. The Tarkov community had some of the biggest YouTubers on the platform championing their cause, and they've only received minor concessions in the grand scheme of what the developers were originally trying to take. Now, I know content creators are only a small, annoying part of any community. Hell, I'd be happy if this video breaks 500 views. Please subscribe, by the way. But if the Elite Dangerous community doesn't have any established internal voices speaking up for them, I am very worried about the future of the game. Microtransactions that financially encourage developer laziness at the expense of player enjoyment are the beginning of the death spiral of any video game. Promoting additional subpar gameplay from the developers in order to drive more microtransaction sales, fixing that poor gameplay. The only action that can reverse such a trajectory is the swift and loud pushback from the community. Leave negative reviews on the Steam page saying you disagree with the introduction of pay-to-win starships. It doesn't have to be more detailed. That can be the whole review. Boost any Reddit posts or Elite Dangerous content creators you are seeing that are talking seriously about the negative impact of this monetization strategy to your game. As many eyes inside and outside of the community that you can get on this issue will help pile up the pressure on Frontier. There is still time, but you have to be swift and you have to be loud. Good luck, commanders. Whoa, hold up, video is not ending there, because I missed something huge in my first few rounds of research, so I'm throwing it in right at the end here as a bonus to all you good little listeners who stayed this deep into the video. Turns out Elite Dangerous has also sold a perpetual DLC license, just like Tarkov did in the EOD edition, and just like Elder Scrolls Online did with the ESO Plus subscription. This one is called the Lifetime Expansion Pass, granting access to all current and future seasons of Elite Dangerous. And just like Bethesda and Battlestate before them, Frontier is weaseling out of honouring the spirit of this agreement by having the new ship as a microtransaction instead of included as part of a season. So this is how Frontier treats their most die-hard fans who forked out as much as $195 USD for a lifetime expansion pass. They bend them over backwards and they fuck them up the arse. Holy hell, these companies are fucking despicable assholes with how they treat their customers. Fuck me.